annual meeting, but also as our February 5th meeting. And I want to welcome you all. I want to know why you're here and not putting a boat in. 73 on my thermometer today. Beautiful weather. But you're here and we're glad for it. As we've been doing, we're going to run the meeting, and then public comment will be reserved until after the business part of the meeting has concluded. With that, the minutes of the January meeting, has everyone had a chance to look them over? January 26th?
Yes.
Any additions, deletions, or corrections?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the January 26, 2017 board meeting minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up is the treasurer's report.
Okay, basically the financial statement was provided in your packet, and as you could imagine, with only 1 month in the middle of the winter, not a whole lot of activity going on the lake, although it did pick up here over the past couple of weeks. Income-wise, we have received some fishing tournament income in of about $800, and then did receive some interest on some of our savings. So really the only income we reflected for the month was approximately $917. Basically running a skeletal staff right now, basically with James and Adam. So payroll has been minimalized, as kind of noted there. In addition, basically a lot of the supplies and stuff are pretty minimal as well. The big expense in January is the insurance renewal. It does come up, and the first quarterly payment was made. So that was the bulk of the expenses, totaling about $18,000 there. Overall, total expenses for the months were only approximately $26,333. So obviously, this time of year, without any income, we're operating pretty much at a loss of about $25,000 for the year. But basically par for the course, as the old saying goes there. Financially, from a balance sheet side, we are in a very, very strong position right now. We currently have approximately $300,000 in a checking account. We do have $116,000 in the general fund CDs, and then of course the cumulative maintenance fund CD is up to $86,000. So current assets are running about $513,000 in total. Fixed assets, no real changes there. Basically consisting a lot of the dredging equipment, and currently we don't have any debt to speak of. Just our normal account payables that we get in and month out, totaling $1,173. So from a financial standpoint, again, the lake is in a very, very good position to start out the year. Certainly would be welcome and open to any comments or questions.
Anybody?
And with that, if I could have a motion for approval of the financial highlights.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. And then lastly, basically also included in your report is just the claims that have been submitted for January 2017. Total claims submitted for the month are $21,471.65. Does anybody have any questions on the claims as presented? And if not, if I could have a motion for approval of the claims.
I move.
And a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Next up, we have our 2016 vegetation control update. Would one of you men like to introduce Dave?
We have Nate Long coming up with aquatic control. They've been doing our treatment for vegetation, nuisance vegetation for quite a while now. We got a really good rapport with them, and it's nice to have a company that we've actually had such a history with, so they know the lake like the back of their hand. Thank you very much for what you do, Nate, and I'll give the floor over to you.
All right, thanks for having me. We do this every year, but briefly, I just want to kind of go over some of the history. It's good to know the history of the lake before we go into what took place this year. Lake Lemons is historically a pretty rich lake, nutrient-rich lake. Grows a lot of a lot of vegetation. Over the years, and I brought a few extra of these, and I'll leave them here when you're done. When I'm done, you can grab them. But over the years, when we started off in the late 1970s, here there was several hundreds of acres of invasive Eurasian water milfoil that was growing in the lake, and some groups took action then, and then the Conservancy got formed and really got more of a plan together, and ever since then it's been up and down. We have big years of milfoil and other invasive and nuisance vegetation growth that needs to be addressed. And historically, this group, of all the groups we work with, has probably done one of the best jobs of managing, because you have people on staff, you have the Conservancy set up, and without that, your lake would be pretty much unusable a lot of the years. So it's a good thing you have such a good group here. You have received some funding from the Lake and River Enhancement Program over the years to do vegetation management. This year, or this past year, only $5,000, but we keep asking every year. 2016, last year, this time, I think it was at the January meeting last year, we predicted a pretty, not a good year coming up as far as vegetation growth from what we saw at the end of the year. Didn't figure there'd be many changes, and it turned out that there really wasn't much of a change. Throughout the Midwest this year, especially in some similar lakes we do in central Indiana, there was extreme growth this year. The conditions were just perfect. We had pretty early spring. Growth really took off. It wasn't necessarily the case here. Maybe it was because of management the previous year. Maybe it was drawdown, but you didn't get any good freezes, so I don't know if that was the case or not. But didn't have that bad of a year this year. We didn't have to treat till June 17th. We go out on the lake and check things out with the Conservancy staff. James goes with me, and we check things out and see where we consider plants are at a nuisance level. We don't want to kill everything in the lake. Obviously, we want to leave fish cover. We want to help those plants filter out. Those plants filter out some of the nutrients, help the lake stay clear. James and I went out in early June, checked things out. We marked 38.5 acres of invasive milfoil that we treated with a systemic herbicide called Renovate. Small area of some native plants we had to treat. Didn't have to come back for another month. Had about 19 acres that we deemed to be nuisance level vegetation. At that time, we also treated American lotus in the upper end. We had adjusted the maintenance line. The year before, kind of let it go, didn't have the maintenance line, wanted to let it grow out a little further, and there was some people didn't like that very much, so we decided that and got together and we moved it back a little bit to kind of a compromise line from where it used to be. So we had to treat 17 and over 17 acres of lotus this year, which is a little bit more than normal. We come back in August and we touch those up. We drive an airboat over the lotus. You know how it grows up real tall. So we have to drive over it and we have to spray. So sometimes some gets washed off, so we always plan to come back, and we came back later and touched up those areas that were still green. And along with that, we treated a few spots. Other than that, there wasn't much action. Basically treated about the same amount. We were well under budget from the last 3 years we've been under budget. But I'm guessing, based on what I saw late last year, there was a lot of milfoil out in the main lake, and James probably would agree with that, and the upper end was getting real thick where we weren't treating because it wasn't in people's way yet. Milfoil is a perennial plant. It's not one that comes up from seed every year. It's still there. You get this warm spring, and I've seen years, I think when Bob was here, where we come out in April and there's milfoil everywhere. I'm afraid that could be a year like this. If it is, I'm sure these guys will be on top of it, and like they have been in the past, because we get eyes on the lake all the time, and we'll have to come out earlier. Unfortunately, that usually increases your expense. If you spend a lot early, there's probably going to be stuff that grows back later. Other than that, I mean, you've got a good crew here. This is one of the easier lakes, I mean, to work with, because you guys are out there and know your plants and are really on top of things, and we like working with groups like this. So thank you for your business, and I guess I'll take questions.
Nate, I have several for you, just on behalf of my constituents and all of us. I think you answered the first one. If you spray in the rain, is that effective, or is that taken care of by your coming back, just like you said with the airboat?
If you spray, you spray emergent stuff, the stuff that's out of the water in the rain, doesn't work as well. Okay. But first off, we wouldn't spray in the rain, but sometimes you can't predict that. I think some years we've been here and we'd spray and there's a storm would pass over, but we do come back and hit those areas. And usually if we come back and hit them and they're still not down, the guys always let me know if something doesn't go down.
Okay. Also, I was wondering if you could clarify when we're killing roots and when we're not killing roots,
Yeah.
and why some of the, thumbnail sketch of how we
That's a good question. With the milfoil, we use, when we see what we call a monoculture, it's just milfoil, we use a product called Renovate. It costs a little bit more, but it does kill the roots. And if you're treating it all, you get really long control, but we do get longer control because you kill the roots, but we're not treating all the milfoil, so you do get some that floats back in and could regrow, but it does a better job than what we use a contact herbicide for. Is when we see mixed populations where you have milfoil, you might have some other native plants that are growing up in the area, so you have to use a different type of herbicide. That knocks everything down, but you tend to see more regrowth after that. With the Lotus, that's a systemic herbicide as well. We wait till it flowers, which I know stinks, so you have to wait that long. But when it flowers, it's starting to move stuff down for storage, so it moves the chemical down and will kill the roots. And if you've noticed this past year where we didn't treat lots of areas before, we always had kind of a line there. You can see we went a couple years without treating, and it doesn't take long for it to move back. So you can basically draw a line with it because you're killing the roots. There's not a whole lot of seed growth with that Lotus. So next year shouldn't be as bad as many acres to treat next year. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. Also, in your report, I wondered if you could give us, a very quick thought on, you mentioned the beneficial factors of established Lotus. And this is a time when we're all trying to learn about how everything relates and go forward. And if you could give us just a snippet as to...
That's a great question. I know there's a lot of controversy over where Lotus grows and where it doesn't. Lotus does provide, and it can slow down some of the erosion. It provides fish cover, it provides wildlife cover, especially fish cover. I fish the lake, and a lot of other people like fishing around the Lotus. And some people think it's pretty. I personally do. Others that have it right in front of their house probably don't. The issue I've always seen with the Lotus is we can kill that Lotus in that upper end. We can kill every bit of it. But after we do that, you're going to have the waters, a lot of those areas, the water's this deep, you're going to have coontail, milfoil, everything else, algae growing there. You're going to have a mat of nastiness. And they can't afford to have us come in there and treat a foot of water constantly. So that's kind of the theory. Why not have this beneficial plant that provides cover for fish, provides cover for wildlife, helps filter some of the water out? Why not let that grow instead of just knocking it all out and having this nasty algae and weed mess there? So that's kind of the compromise and I'm kind of speaking for you guys. They're more involved in saying where we treat, but I give input. But we kind of compromise where we knock it back where people can get boats through, have somewhat of a sight line in some areas, but also leave some for cover. And I think it's done a pretty good job, but I'm sure you're not going to make everybody happy on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Those are my questions. Anybody else have?
Yeah, Nate, I just had a quick question, just budgeting wise. You're looking like a budget estimate. You're thinking about $50,000 again.
Yeah, 50 is what we've just kind of traditionally done, and we've been under that. This year, I would say, I mean, if you get anything extra, you might stick it back in a hole somewhere. I know that's hard to do, but I'm just afraid this year you could see more. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure you saved everything from the last 3 years, right? But
Unfortunately, it didn't work quite.
I know.
Anybody else?
You've asked most of the questions. When you say next year, you're talking about...
This year.
Okay, this year. Okay, good. Because we're going to have the same problem this year with a warm winter that we did last year. Is there a reason you may have said this and I may have dozed off. Is there a reason you let it flower? And that takes it down to the root? Is that what you...
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah, it's most effective.
So that's what most of the people are wondering. Why do you let it flower?
Why do you wait so long?
Because that does provide seeding too, correct?
The Lotus doesn't reproduce that well through seeds. There is some reproduction, but that's not its main way to reproduce. And I know it's a pain because basically you don't see the benefits of the Lotus treatment until the next year, because after we treat, you've got dead stems sitting there in July and August. And then the next year, though, if you even go to like Google Earth and look year to year, you can do like a timeline, you can see where the line has been kept. It does work that way. You're going to we'll spray an area, you might have a few pop up the next year, but if you keep hitting that, you have less every year, and eventually you don't have to treat those areas. But yeah, you need to let it flower. it just works the best that way because it's moving.
Okay, that's what we need to tell people then. And it'll probably flower about the same time, July?
Yeah, usually around
Okay,
July.
So you'll be out sometime in July to take care of that. We probably need to discuss, not tonight, but a maintenance line again if they're going to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We intend to do
That's
that.
all I have. Thank you very much. We appreciate what you do for us.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we don't take
Okay.
public till the end. Thanks. Nate, thank you. Everybody have your questions answered? We appreciate what you do. So that, I guess, brings us to the operating agreement, or am I skipping something? Hold on.
Yeah, the operating agreement.
Yep. Who's got that? You? James, do you have that?
Yeah.
Okay, does that need signatures tonight? or
Well, we need
motions?
to, yeah, we need to have a motion to
We need a
approve it.
motion.
I'll make a motion that we continue the services of Mr. Long and his company.
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the 2017 vegetation control and operating agreement via Aquatic Control. And Mr. Nate Long, all those in favor, any discussion?
It's just a point of order, but not a major one. Just we may need to look at the budget. You budgeted 40, and they're projecting 50. But again, a minor detail.
Okay. Duly
Does it
noted.
include the layer grant, the possibility of getting a layer grant? then?
No, that's just our
Okay.
funds. Correct.
All right. Do you need to amend that motion, or are you all right with it?
I'm okay with the
Okay.
way it is. Just
All right.
a point of order.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the 2017 vegetation control and operating agreement. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That'll come down. Signature. All right, next, and Nate, you already escaped, did you already go? If you don't care to stay, I'll excuse you like I usually do.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're welcome to stay.
I would love to, but I have to get home.
All right, thanks for coming, we appreciate it very
Unless you
much.
could do it for 40,000, then we may.
Hey, Nate, do you want to sign this? I know you've reviewed it. That way I don't have to mail it to you, mail it back and all that.
All right, the next business
send
in
you a
order
copy.
is the...
Nate.
One more, sorry. Next business in order is the Strategic Planning Committee update. Mary Jane?
Okay. We actually have had 2 meetings since the last meeting. We had a call with Joe Pfeiffer from KCI on February 8th, and Mike joined that call to talk about the draft report that Joe had prepared on the sedimentation study. And then we had our regular meeting last Friday and debriefed from our call. And basically from what we discussed on the call, Joe is going to take the answers to our questions and our suggestions for how to clarify some things in the report. And he's going to get that report ready by the end of this month in a more final form, and it will be available for distribution to all freeholders at that point. And we will be working with Joe's schedule to have him come to one of our board meetings probably. And this eludes me. Did we say, those of you that were at the meeting, did we actually say which month we were going to target for Joe to come to a board meeting?
We talked about summer meetings.
Yeah,
Maybe
but we
early.
wondered, what sticks in my mind is we talked about, would that be too late?
Talked about potentially having him come out in April for an educational.
That's right.
That's
or
what it was.
not
I'm
an actual
sorry.
board
I just
meeting,
had
but
like
for
a brain
for
cramp.
meeting to go over their
High
findings.
school or something? Is that
Or
what
in the park.
Yeah, we just do it at the park. I was thinking when the
Okay.
shelter was.
Yeah.
Thank goodness
So-
for youth, right?
Yes.
We're pretty-
Adam remembers. Yeah, so we would like to have Joe come and have as many freeholders as possible benefit from hearing him talk about the study and what he thinks about the lake. And we have not, obviously, because the report's not final, but as part of the thinking around sedimentation management going forward, we also completed an application for a LAIR grant before the end of January, because that's when they were due, so that we can start to have some money available for whatever we end up recommending back to the board. We reviewed preliminary and rough drafts from the sub-teams on lake health, recreational opportunities, park operations, community and government relations, and education and communication. And we had a lot of discussion about, are we organized right? And that discussion kind of rolled into where are we actually going, and does everybody want to go with us? And that has evolved into some discussion of doing a survey of freeholders to really find out, what do people want Lake Lemon to be in the future? Sedimentation and dredging aside, this would be everything else. So do we want to keep it a very private lake? Do we want to promote tourism? Do we want to demarket the lake? And I don't think anybody on the committee nor anybody on the board can answer that for the majority of people who are owners on the lake. So we're going to be working on putting a survey together. And also there's been some side discussion with some other members of the committee about potentially doing some focus groups with other interested groups. You know, so get the IU people for a focus group, get the Bloomington Yacht Club, you know, other entities that have business on the lake, and see what they're thinking before we start to say, oh, let's do all these wonderful things and, you know, build a new shelter house and all those things. We thought maybe we should get some additional information from people. So that will be forthcoming. Finally, we determined that our regular meetings are going to be the third Friday of each month at 3:30 p.m. at the office. So just so everybody has it in mind, the next three meetings will be March 17th. There will be no green beer. April 21st and May 19th at 3:30. And that's my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you
You're welcome.
very much for all you've done to get this off the ground. All right, Adam, 2017 dredging priorities.
All right. Due to, since we're not going to have all the board members here, we normally do it in March, we decided to go ahead and move up the priorities. We did have a dredging study group meeting just last week. We talked about some of the priorities. Since we do have the capability now in the small barge, getting the Chitwa channels, my recommendation was that we start off in zone 137, which would be the Chitwa channels, utilizing the new equipment that we have. If we move past that, putting back the Icebox Cove that was second on the priority list last year when you get to them. So I was thinking to have that as a secondary. That is zone 110. But I'll go ahead and open this up for discussion with the board.
Mike, would you care to weigh in, or do you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you give us an idea on the percentage of the budget that each of these zones would take?
I'm not positive on that. If we do all the Chitwa channels, earlier estimates we're guessing around 8,000 to 9,000 yards. That's also we estimate on Eidolon ended up being the majority of the budget. So if we did do all that, I would probably give it a, depending on efficiency, probably a 80 to 90% of the budget for the year if we were to go through and finish all of those. The Icebox Cove has a pretty long dig too. If we just did that, I would say that would probably be 40%. These are just off the custom numbers.
Yeah, I know, basically Icebox, we did prior to the floods, and so it did get filled back in, but it looks like we took out about 2,240 cubic yards at that time. So it'd be pretty similar, but a lot of that I know is filled back in, and a lot of that happened in 2008 when the flood came back at that So I know some of my district in that area has kind of voiced some concern. They are starting to lose some access down that way. So I do definitely appreciate SETI Group putting them on the recommendation.
As I understood it, 3 homeowners there did their own removal. That was
Number
not
of years ago.
Conservancy done.
Yeah, that's correct.
The ones furthest back, furthest south, correct?
I don't know if it was all the way back, but certainly in the entrance way to the ice box they did, yes.
But they did pay for their own removal?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just noting.
So, I'm sorry, Adam, can you say again what the priorities are?
First priority, since we have the equipment, zone 137, which would be the Chitwood channels, and secondary zone 110, which is Icebox Cove.
Okay.
Michael, as the chair of the DSG, do you care to
Yeah, I
weigh in?
was just seeing if there was any more questions.
Okay.
There was quite a bit of discussion as we got the email from Lance, as one of his constituents was concerned, and they were a third priority last year. We moved them to a second priority this year, depending on time and room at the disposal site, things like that are out of our control. Tim Speck brought up the area in Cemetery Island, which our dredger really weighs in heavily that is not something that we want to use our equipment on, but it's still up for discussion. We still talk about that hump in that area, but again, it came up for discussion. We did discuss it pretty much at length and left it just on the table, for future reference.
I think the issue with that is that's kind of hard pan.
It's all hard pan,
Yeah.
so, sediment doesn't turn into hard pan. Hard pan is a result of sediment leaving.
Yeah.
And so we've got some discussion there whether or not we're going to either try to use that as disposal or whatever. Nothing has been determined at this point. Les did have an area at the end of the causeway. He's got some people there that have Roger Duke's area, I'm going to say, but they still have access. And so what this came down to was the Walker Channel has no access. So I want to make sure I hit all the points. Pam did ask how early we would start. Adam's got some rip wrapping to do in March, so probably sometime in April.
Yep.
We can look. We've got some docks and boat lifts, some utilities that we need to be concerned with over there. I think Tommy said that he would take care of the utilities. But if you've got some docks or boat lifts or whatever in those channels, beginning in April, we'll be looking at probably getting those removed. The barge is 20 foot wide, so it'll dig a path 20 foot plus 2 foot on each side. So those were some of the things that we talked about. We had a pretty good meeting. I felt very good with the outcome of the meeting, the discussion that was involved there. I'm going to look at Les and just see if he gives me a shake of the head. Nodded it good, okay, because I don't see Tim in the audience, but that's really all I have. And I concur with Adam's recommendation.
All right, any other questions from the board, discussion? I think what we are down to is a motion to accept this recommendation.
I'll make the motion that Adam stated that the Chitwood channels is first priority, and the second priority, if we get through those channels, then we would look at Icebox Cove.
I would second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we follow the manager and the dredging study committee recommendation for 2017. If there's no further discussion, are we ready to vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Adam.
Thank you.
All right, manager's report.
Manager's report next. I'm actually going to flip these around real quick while we're talking about dredging. I looked at excavator rental quotes, about the same price as last year. We're looking at a Bobcat, came in at $2,950. Komatsu is at $4,100, and Caterpillar is at $2,300. I don't know if the board wants to make a recommendation. I think we already recommended that we go ahead and with the rental. I think with that I can proceed with what I think is the best deal, unless we want to motion on that. One of the things I would like to discuss is if we are going to go with the oil change, moving the excavators to the biodegradable again. Actually, that cost us over $4,000 to have the switch out. And if we are going to move that, then I think I will need a motion from the board for that additional expenditure or recommendation.
4,000? That's what it is. This is what we did last year.
That is what we did last year.
I have a question, just, is this a machine that we would consider buying? So if we're gonna spend the 4,000 on it and it works, and we keep it, then that's 4,000 that we've spent,
Only one time.
Only one time, so.
Good question.
Yeah, really when we go with the initial contract, when we start the rental, it's going to be the type of contract that we sign as if we were going to just do a straight rental, or we decide we can do a lease to own type deal. So we will need to enter into that at the beginning of the rental.
I think we should probably then discuss what you and I were talking about the difference in a rental versus what, in terms of the way it's going to dig, just so the board knows.
Yeah, that's always come up from everybody we've talked to. The way we dig is kind of steam shovel style. That is not going to be possible with the rental. We'll just look at what machine you're doing. The actual quick couplers on ours, they're aftermarket, they're not Komatsu. So I think unless we actually buy a machine, when we do decide to purchase one, if we decide to purchase one, then we can look into getting our own buckets and the type of coupler that we need. But on the rentals with the standard equipment that they have, most of the machines in this size and with the OEM factory equipment does not operate that way. It's not a deal breaker by any means.
I just thought it was relevant given the rent to buy or rent to own kind of thing and the oil change, so everybody knows.
And the couplers, how does it impact the actual dredging itself? Would it have any impact on bucket direction or?
Really, this is kind of we can dig real clean channels now. We've talked to some of the other dredging companies we consulted with in the past, and they dig that way. Essentially, after they dig a channel, as they're backing out, they just have to kind of smooth out the channel since you are constantly moving it. But unless we decide to buy a piece of equipment and get aftermarket couplers and our buckets made for us, it's kind of the name of the game.
It's just two different approaches, correct? I mean,
and then in terms of the hydraulics and all that, what's environmentally, what's our responsibility there in terms of IDEM and all that?
If we did have a major spill, we could potentially be fined or in trouble. Really, the amount of financial impact that would have would depend on the size of the impact. If we had a fish kill on a machine that size, I'm not sure we would lose enough to have a major fish kill, but if we did, then we can look at something.
We would still have to clean it up regardless.
Yes. Yeah.
And a biodegradable, do you have a cleanup expense?
No, essentially it breaks down.
It's basically just vegetable oil.
what's that?
I said it's basically just vegetable oil.
Oh, okay.
Do you carry absorbent materials on the barge?
Yes, yeah, we do. We have booms on the barge and absorb material. So.
I may recommend that we do probably consider going with biodegradable because, I mean, it's almost like insurance. Reality is, if you have it spilled, the cleanup expense is not cheap.
Exceed $4,000.
And, that's something that lies outside our normal, policy, so it is a little bit of security there. I don't like the expense, but, it does provide you a little bit of comfort.
You need a motion for that, Adam, then to go with the excavator rental and then.
Yeah, to go with the rental and then to do
With
the
an option
oil
to buy.
change.
We'll probably buy that one, we'll probably buy one that has the quick coupler. Yeah. So I'll make the motion that we give the manager the latitude to rent an excavator and get the biodegradable oil.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Adam.
All right, let's get into the annual report. First off, we got a couple more inches of gray coming on the sides. Thank you all for that.
2 years worth. 2 years worth of this job.
Just like the president.
We're just going to go ahead and go through the annual report. Let's go down the line. We had a few extra copies over here. If everybody got a chance to grab one, I think there's 30 copies, so we may have to share some. First off, Board of Directors. We had 2 board positions filled in 2016. Mary Jane Brown ran unopposed and was elected to a 4-year term in Sub-Area 3. We also appointed Andy Hoffman to a 1-year term. There was no election for that. Board officers in 2016 had Pam Dugan as chair, Sue Miller as vice chair, and Lance Everly as treasurer. Our operations personnel, staff that have included at the gatehouse operations, we had Joe Hopkins, who's been here. It was his last year, and he'd been here for probably 5 years now. And we actually are bringing out his little brother this year, so they look exactly the same. Joe Hopkins, Chris New, Alex Snooks, and Andrew O'Malia. We will have Alex Snooks and Andrew O'Malia will be coming back on. This will be Alex's 3rd year, so kind of be the senior gatehouse. Andrew was here last year for the majority, the second half of the year. So he's very well trained, so I'm very confident in them, and I'm happy they're coming back, so I'm not starting with a whole new staff. We had James Van Tassel, operations supervisor. Levi Wortham is our barge operator, and Isaac Walls is our pushboat operator. At the end of the year, we also brought on our backup operator. His name is Jim Walker. We've actually had him out some in the springtime, give him some seat time in the excavator, and we'll be doing training with him and have quite a bit of confidence in him. He seems like a really nice guy and has a long history of different equipment usage. For our gatehouse operations, the 2016 boating season started on March 19th, ended on Sunday, November 26th. The total fees collected for boat permits and launch fees this year was $135,257. We hosted a total of 20 fishing tournaments in 2016, so we had tournaments almost every weekend that we could. Boating safety and enforcement, we actually had some at DNR out, a couple meetings to give their kind of end-of-year review. Ultimately, we had 14 citations and 23 warnings. I guess that's gone down considerably over the years, and DNR says they're pretty happy with the way things have been going on the lake. I'll go ahead and switch it over to James for aquatic plants.
Yeah, I think Nate covered a decent amount of this, but last year we totaled almost 80 acres were treated, including the emergent species. So our expenditures were $38,690, rounding up just a little bit there. We did receive $5,000 from DNR Lair, so technically our expenditures would have been more like $33,690. So like Nate said, we've been under that $50,000 budget. I've been trying to be very tight on what I'm treating to keep that budget low. There may be a year, like he said, where it blooms a little bit more and we got to treat more, but we'll try and do what we can and keep everything open.
For the 2015-2016 winter drawdown, we drew the lake down 3.5 feet. The first time we opened the gate on December 2nd, shut on December 11th to achieve that drawdown. We got precipitation, I believe a week later, so we had to reopen it on the 29th of December, and to shut again at 41 inches below normal pool on January 21st. Seems like the winters have been getting more and more precipitation. It's kind of fighting us when we draw it down. And we know overnight that thing can come up 4 or 5 feet if we have it down. Going to do the wildlife control, James?
Sure. We do this every year. All you need is a registration and to submit a final report to IDNR, and you can, there's different methods, but you go out and treat the Canada goose nests and the eggs. And last year there were 19 nests treated on Cemetery Island and 1 additional nest on South Shore Drive. It seemed to be pretty effective. You do see some goslings out, but there weren't too many out by the cemetery, so I think our efforts are definitely helping keeping the Canada goose at bay.
They were outside agitators.
Yeah. Well,
Coming from a dead lake across the street.
Yeah, you can't get them all.
Is that all the nests when you say 19 on Cemetery Island?
Yeah,
That's all you can...
That's all I can find on the island, yeah. Which that was probably a little bit lower than years past. I'd say kind of 25 would be on the high end of what I've treated.
For our safety, we started bringing the dogs out there to help clear the island before treating, which is
Yeah,
Good idea.
25 nests, you're probably averaging, almost 8 eggs per nest. So when you add it up that way, that's almost a couple hundred geese.
To do a 2016 water testing, we contracted the IU School of Public and Environmental Affairs. They test for full parameters of chemical and biological, such as nutrients, algae, dissolved oxygen, fecal coliform, bacteria. The results from 2016 are expected in May. Generally, when Melissa Clark from SPIA will come out and give her annual update. We've pretty much been staying pretty consistent, though, as far as it's called the trophic level, and that's how productive the lake is, essentially how much algae growth and plant growth that we have in the lake. Brittle Point Park operations. The park opened on Saturday, May 28th. We charge daily through Monday, September 5th. Essentially Memorial Day to Labor Day is when the park's open. We did raise the passes last year to $60 for a season vehicle pass, and the daily park passes was $7 per vehicle. Total emissions collected throughout the year were $39,960. Brittle Point Park Shelter was opened 13 times for rentals. Shelter fees $125 a day, and we collected a total of $1,625 in shelter rental. We actually had some nice signs made up this year too that we put on. There wasn't enough advertising, so a lot of people may not have known about the rentals. So we have signs on both sides of the shelter house now actually stating that it's for rental for different occasions and to contact us. So we're hoping that'll have an impact with the visibility to the public and trying to get it rented out for some additional income. The IU women's varsity rowing team hosted their events on the lake. Between that and the Lake Lemon Triathlon, we received an additional $2,727 in revenue in our special events fees. The board hosted the fireworks show at Brittle Point Park on July 2nd. Sky Magic Pyrotechnics did it this last year. They've been doing it for the past 3 years. The show cost $6,500. Donations and contributions collected totaled $6,950. We actually are looking at going with a different company this year. The cost will be the same, but they're going to manage it kind of non-profit. They're more of a local company, so whatever we give them, they're going to spend completely in shells. So I'm pretty excited for the company to come out. I think we should have a pretty good fireworks show this year. Shoreline project permits. We issued 7 permits this year. It's actually on the low side compared to in past years. We probably averaged 12 to 15 permits per year. These primarily deal with shoreline erosion control, such as riprap, seawall construction, minor shoreline improvements, and dock renovations and repairs. Since 1996, we've issued 369 shoreline permits to Conservancy freeholders. The 2016 Lake Enhancement Program consists of 4 primary functions: are lake debris, stump removal, shoreline erosion control, that's the application of riprap for shoreline control, dredging, and then developing and maintaining our disposal sites. The equipment that we use is the large barge, 66 foot long by 36 foot wide with the excavator, our push boat, bulldozer, completed off-road truck, our maintenance utility truck, then now the new barge I brought on, which is 40 feet long and 20 feet wide. We'll kind of go through the attachments here for the totals of that. First, we have attachment A, which is the debris and stump removal. Our staff cost for debris removal, dredger was $2,100. Assistant dredger was $954. Our fuel estimation was about $637 of fuel. Contractual rental services was just over $2,000, and that's when we rent the skid steer and loaders to kind of pick up the debris that comes on the shoreline so we can haul it off. The grand total was $5,773. Just for past records, in 2015 we spent $9,700 on debris removal. 2014, $5,200. Debris removal along the long causeway. This is including that staff cost of $832. Contractual is $1,500. The rental is $582, and then the total is $2,900. Next, we have our 2016 shoreline stabilization, our riprap. We went through a total of 160 tons of riprap. We had some small stone in there too, not just a large riprap where we backfilled some people's seawalls. That was 40 tons, and then 81 tons on the City of Bloomington property. Total of 281 tons of stone. These were in service districts 109 and 111, which is District 1, Zone 115, District 2, and Zone 127, which is District 4. 305 lineal feet of shoreline were stabilized. The total cost of riprap stone was $2,800. The small stones, $574. The LOCD cost on the actual CBU property that we did, the non-private jobs, was $1,400. Our total cost that we spent was $5,745. The private cost included in that was $4,303. The private stuff is essentially cost neutral for us and do that as a benefit for the freeholders. And if people want to pay money to help stabilize the shore, by golly, we want to encourage them to do that. Attachment C, sediment removal. We have the financial summary. Our dredger, we spent $19,308. Assistant dredger, $8,900. Total personnel was $28,223. We did budget $33,000 for the year. Supply costs, diesel fuel, $3,257, and dredging supplies, which is hydraulic oils, filters. That came out to $9,800. Total supply cost was $13,000. Services and charges in that, we have our insurance, $10,658 for the dredging equipment. Repair and maintenance, $3,210. And we did not have any of the loan service this year since we paid off a loan about 2 years ago. Our total service and charges were $13,868. So our grand total was $55,230. I guess while we're talking about, I'll kind of skip to the summary of yardage. Our priority 1 service areas on 131 and 132, the west side of Point Eidolon. We removed 10,400 yards. And that is 95% complete. We are going to go back to right at the beginning of the season and just take a little, probably take out another barge or two so we can put it in our long silt barrier, and that'll be at the beginning of the season. Zone priority 2, service on 108. That was 15 yards, and that was at Shinar Cove and what has now been deemed Bob's Cove by motion of the board. Cubic yard cost on 2016. Essentially, we came out to $5.30 per cubic yard. In 2015, we were digging at $5.61. Cost of cubic yards, if we include the disposal site preparation and maintenance, it's $5.66 per yard. As far as Possum Trot itself, for the preparation and maintenance, dredger was $881, about 23 hours. Assistant dredger, $225. Supplies, stone, and diesel, just for the bulldozer and excavator. Total supplies came out to $2,595. That does include the Kenny Clark site. In order to keep that program going and the eligibility to use that site, we did enter a 3-year agreement where we paid them $1,000 per year to keep that site online, which is all in all a pretty small cost to guarantee us that disposal site. Other staff costs, the small barge assembly, that came out to $5,600.88. Equipment and maintenance, total of $7,947. Our private dredging this year, we removed 1,000 yards of private dredging, 10 barge loads. The total cost on that was $2,817. That's essentially cost neutral for the Conservancy District. We charge $1,000 per large barge load. That really covers our costs and fuel and everything. And then office and park work, spent about $375. So pretty minimal. We did bring the bulldozer there to clear out some large trees, and some of that includes like taking out our dock and everything. So that is the conclusion of the report. Do you have any questions or comments from the board?
I do.
Right.
When you guys do private dredging, is that at the expense of the areas that we're supposed to be dredging and in our priorities?
Well, I guess it's twofold. If we were digging in the same area, one way that could be at the expense is that material does go into the similar disposal site, tragedy of the commons. But we do budget income for that, so that's also between the riprap and the private dredging that is included in our income.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
so let me see if I understand that. So you're balancing the need to get dredging done and at the same time, the need to meet the budget to bring the revenue in.
Yes. that's correct.
Okay.
that'd be a question I would, if I were expecting to get my area dredged and somebody's private dredging was done, that's why I wanted to know that.
And since we did run into a capacity issue this year, we'll mostly just be focusing on the riprap for private jobs. This year we will be holding off on most of the dismay of probably even some people in here, some of the private jobs on the east end, just so we can keep that open.
Well, I'll weigh in on that a little bit. That was discussed as well at the DSG meeting, and, you know, it was, we can't very well use the priority and then have the disposal site filled up by private dredging and then
No,
not
it's
fulfill the
an
priority.
issue.
Okay, so,
So it's how do we balance
Well,
that?
you
And
know, we have some recommendations, but not to be made tonight, but I think we do have
Okay.
some things to recommend to the board to look at, which would also include your group.
well, because we need money.
Right.
You know, that's the other, that will always be the struggle, is we have to maintain a level of income to be able to do the things we want to do, but we also have to
That is correct.
get the
Well,
dredging done.
And then you have to budget for it. I mean, the way the state budget works, you have to have it in there to spend it one thing or the other. So it's, you know, it is more of a long-term planning type focus.
Yes.
And moving forward, one of the things we will need to look at is, once we have pretty much access for the majority of freeholders, is maybe kind of transition to using our equipment for more of the private digging and potentially looking at changes in the cost. I think that could potentially be a big source of revenue while we're still keeping it at a reasonable cost and providing benefit to the freeholders.
But the figures show that there was less dredging done last year than we were budgeted, there were less hours than.
Yes, and that was,
budgeted. Yeah, and so explain, was that because of weather, was it, I mean, what was the reason for that?
That was, we ran out of capacity for the year at the
Okay.
East End Disposal Site. We ended up with, I think, probably about 2 weeks worth of hours that we could have had. We had nowhere to put the dirt on the east side, and it becomes extremely cost prohibitive to transfer the dirt from the east end all the way to the west end. When we do start digging on the west end next time, we'll have a substantial amount of site preparation for the disposal site down there. So we would have moved down there by the time we kind of got the equipment down there and site ready. We would have been.
Just trying to anticipate questions.
Yeah.
And I think we overspent Levi in his other categories this
Okay.
for 2016 more so. So if you look at Levi's budget as a whole on debris, disposal site, all that,
We
you know,
used
we're
them
balanced out.
efficiently, that's what, okay, good.
So, not to beat this horse too long, but so our challenge as a conservancy is how do we maintain a balance every single year? And I assume that DSG is going to help us as they.
We'll approach the board and your group with suggestions and costs
Great.
associated with those, and which we have. We will have to have another meeting, which we probably will before the summer, and look at some of those options.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think, you know, it brings up a good point, I think we're all aware of, is one of our biggest issues, not so much how much we could dig out of the lake, but where we're going to put it.
Right. Right.
That's
And
gonna
that's
be our
always
challenge.
been.
Yeah.
Moving forward, that's something we'll have to focus on, is how can we get, you know, what's already established to work for us instead of just fighting Mother Nature. How can we use that to kind of maybe introduce some cost savings or to decrease the degradation of the lake? So I'm pretty excited about the strategic planning committee. We have some really good discussions and good people on there, and I think we'll be getting some good information and studies coming from them.
Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop for now.
That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the moment you've been waiting for, drawing, James is in charge.
Did everybody get?
Has everyone received a ticket if they want one for a free boat pass for the year?
Did any of your board
6 of them, isn't it?
This is the draw, that could be more important. I've won this.
Your own personal sacrifice. All right, we draw 2, is that right, Jay?
Yeah, we got 2.
Okay.
If you can get the box
Get
open.
it open.
Do you want a drum roll or are we okay?
Shake them up a little bit.
Are you going to have someone?
I'll have someone else draw. You want to draw?
No, I think it should be a freeholder, not a board member. The box has a false bottom.
It's a magic box.
You grab one more. All right. The 2 winners are ending in 5629. David?
Congratulations.
And the second one ending in 5615.
Les gets in under the wire.
And right after the conclusion of the meeting, winners can come to me. We'll go ahead and give you the vouchers to turn in.
Les, if that happens, any time, 5 minutes from now, you could have done it.
I know.
But congratulations, that's great. All right, thank you. This brings us to public comment, and we'll go with the same format whereby if you have a question or a comment, please come to the podium. There's no microphone, but come and tell us your name and where you live, and we'd be happy to hear from you. Yes,
Sure.
It's now public comment, yes, but please tell us who you are and where you live, for those that might not know
What's
you.
your name, Barb?
My name is Barbara Ritter. I'm from District 2. A couple of things. I wish when you were discussing something, I've been out of town for a couple of months, but you would give a little more background information on what you're discussing. And then the other thing is, I know I'm sitting there and I still couldn't hear you, like just talking amongst yourselves. It's still not loud enough. I'm sorry. I don't know how anybody else felt. But I do have another question about the dredging in Chitwood. When you said 8,000 to 9,000 cubic yards, is that per channel or all of it?
No, that was the total for all the internal channels.
For all of the channels?
Yes.
So you expect to get that all done in one dredging season?
Time will tell. Time will tell. I hope so. Yes.
Okay, and our lake is not a private lake, it's a public lake. I don't know.
I understand that, Barb, but the question was, do we want to treat it more like a private lake in that we wouldn't
Do we want to
encourage,
keep it more like a private lake? Is that
we
what you're saying?
wouldn't encourage more traffic on the lake? That was the thinking. I didn't mean to imply that the lake was a private lake.
Kind of what type of level of advertising that we would like to do within the
What-
city and the surrounding
I
area.
still didn't get it. Say
Kind
it.
of the level of external advertising that we want to do to potentially bring in, if we want to bring in more people to bring in revenue and start advertising it in a larger area.
Oh, okay, because I
Versus
didn't
continuing what
understand.
we're
I thought
doing.
you meant, you thought it was a private.
No, no.
a private lake, that's what
No.
I understood, and I'm going, okay. But that was about it.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Anybody else? Malcolm?
It's a quick question. I could ask it from here, but
Oh,
anyway,
we want to make you work.
gotta make it official. My name is Malcolm McClure, District 6, Eglon Point. For Adam, what percentage of the lake, of the shoreline is actually stabilized? Any idea?
It's a good question. I'll have to get back with you on that one.
Well, let's make a guess. Is it like 10%?
I
50%?
think we're well over 10%. If we do not include the delta, if we include the hard shoreline, help me out on this one, James.
I'd probably say at least 50%.
Yeah, I'd say at least 50%. Mesquite City.
So I'm Bettina Kehoe, and I'm in District 3. I have 3 questions for different members of the board. The first one is, I understand that there are 2 days chosen in the year that were volunteer days. Could you tell me the spring date?
Yes, it is.
Last Saturday in April.
Okay, thanks. And if you could advertise that for
Yep.
freeholders to know that they could schedule that on their calendars. The second is that for James, it's my understanding that one way that you can prevent geese from settling in along the shoreline is to actually plant plants along the shoreline so that it inhibits them from coming that way. Do you know how much of that edge of the water line you would have to build?
Not much. If you let the grass grow, I would say probably a foot. If the geese, if they need to have visual to feel safe to come onto the land. So if you have, a strip that big of tall grass, it would prevent the geese from coming on. That's one of the more green methods of keeping them off the yard.
So could we encourage that among the freeholders, and maybe that they plant a border or something along the water line, as that would help instead of having to kill the goslings?
That's twofold. It actually helps if you get small buffer strips like that. It helps that kind of catch some of the runoff from yard fertilizers and actually get taken up by the growing grass too. So.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you. And my third question is for you then, Adam, is that, and perhaps also the committee on dredging is it appears that we're treating dredging and we're treating invasive plant treatments separately. And if we're going to choose an area that's a high priority to dredge, yet at the same time it's an area that is going to be the priority for much of the milfoil treatment, we're talking about the same areas, those two groups need to communicate, otherwise we're digging up what is already then going to be put down as herbicide. And so I don't know which needs to come first or how that strategy has to work, but that's something, it seems that those two things need to work together, and maybe you already are, but it didn't come through in the conversation.
We have done that a little bit in the past. I remember when we were down by Mike and Salmon Harbor, we were far enough in that we did not treat some of that area just because we were going to go dig it out, so there was no point in digging it out.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Tom Deal, District 7. I just have a question. What kind of oil do we use in our ski equipment? Is it just regular hydraulic?
Yeah, regular hydraulic fluid, tractor hydraulic fluid.
And we don't have any concerns with it. And they're in a piece of equipment. It's a good piece of equipment. And I know from my experience with older pieces of equipment, they tend to leak more. So I don't think we should consider spending that money. I know that. I don't think we should spend it if we're not worried about the other equipment.
All right. Thank you.
That's a good point.
Good evening. My name is Susan Snyder-Zellman. I live in District 2. I also have 3 questions, but I'll take a break in between each of them. In case you didn't know it, the secret will be out. ESPN was on the lake this week using our property to film the rowing team. So it's going to be all over national TV. Isn't that exciting? So that was not a question. That was just a share. So,
how do you find out these things?
Well, they were right on our property, and they said, "Can we go down to the water and shoot?" And we said, "Sure."
Wow, that's cool.
They didn't trip or anything. It was wonderful. So, in a discussion with someone this last winter, I learned that from the time the Conservancy was established and the districts were placed, that the number of freeholders per district is different than it is today. So I'm going to use the word imbalance to describe what I believe is in place. So that's my first question. Is that accurate? Like, are there significantly more in one district as opposed to another freeholders?
Yes,
Is there an imbalance?
absolutely.
Okay.
I'm
So that is fact. Thank you. So that brings me to the subsequent questions, which is, can the board realign those districts so it is more spread out? I think of each of you as angels in disguise, and sometimes devils, of course, but it seems to me unfair that some board members might have 4,000 constituents and the others might have 10. I know that's a huge, I made those numbers up, but can the board realign those numbers, or is that something that someone on high has to do? Does anybody know?
I'll guess it's court required.
Why?
Yeah.
In what way? So,
If I can make a suggestion, I know Bob's got his hand up too. There is a little bit of history. I know how those districts were formed. And Bob, I don't know if you could
Do you
share
have
that.
some information on that? Come
Yeah,
on.
they were done primarily geographically.
Yeah.
to make them geographically possible. Just some areas just have, for example, Chitwood, you have a lot of bungalows, boom, 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 but the area is smaller than your area.
Right.
You know, so
land-wise.
Geographically, but part of the district plan does have the legal description of the boundaries. And John is absolutely right. If you're going to change the legal description, you're going to have to go back to the circuit court. And that becomes a legal thing.
So that's a question that needs more research. I'm gonna, before I ask the next question, anybody want to come in?
No, I'd like to add on to what Bob just said, if I may.
Of course.
I believe the CBU did those boundaries, and as Bob said, it is part of the district plan. And District 2 tends, for instance, because we have not the fewest, but we have not as many as, say, some of the other districts, what do I want to say, the property boundaries for individual homes are more, so there's less housing and less areas. For instance, on my particular street, nobody can build right across from, all the houses are lakeside. They cannot build across the street because it's a land trust. And I think that's where a lot of the difference comes in.
Okay, so the next question was, last year at one of the board meetings, there was a reference to an E. coli issue on the North Shore. It was not anything that was shared, to my knowledge, publicly, but I am concerned about water quality in the lake, and I guess I would like to ask, is there a problem? Is it being addressed? What needs to happen?
It's probably referencing the creek coming in from the Knob Creek trailer park by the marina. Yeah.
Location.
So in Melissa's reports, the E. coli has come back as high, higher than most of the areas, other areas around the lake. Some other areas are also high. So that is an area of concern. I know Adam and I have kind of talked to the health department over the years about it, and there's not a whole lot of play we have, because I think that trailer park is the health department that regulates the trailer park is run by the state, not by the county. Is what my understanding is.
Do you know some of the current actions going on, John?
First of all, he's correct, and it's I spoke to the county again in the last month, and the man I spoke to this time pointed out that the trailer park is an anomaly because it's also a campground. And the county controls campgrounds, and the state controls
trailer parks.
So they can't agree on anything. And as near as I can tell, they don't get anything done. But they promise that they'll look into it again.
So is this in Brown or Monroe County?
Monroe.
Okay.
Maybe something should be in the newspaper.
Well, I'm just curious. It does concern me that, certainly we could have a stage to sit in or something. So, but you're keeping on track of it a little bit.
I try.
You're trying. Baseball bats have not been used.
Nobody ever calls back.
No, it's government for you.
Okay. And then my last question, I do not want to get mired in it, but I get absolutely confused about how the decisions are made, about what gets dredged when. I've heard there and seen a magic list, I've seen a priority list. That seems to get shifted. I don't know how it gets shifted. I know the committee's involved in some level. Could we just, maybe for the good of everybody here, have a summary about how those decisions are made, so that if we do want to have more contact with our own district rep about how we feel about it, we might be more productive? Because to me, it's still just a total mystery about how those decisions are made. Maybe there's detail you all have as board members that I don't see, but I'm going to sit down now and let you belabor that a little bit, and don't kick it to death. Some sort of summary. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I can tell you that I think the meeting lasted, we had to wait for Les to have a quorum, and he arrived about 6:17. And we went around the room and we talked about areas of representation that was at the meeting from Les's district, Pam's district, my district, and Tim Speck's district. Those were the 4 people that showed up out of 7. We are still waiting for a representative from Lance's district. The other 2 members had to work, Greg McAtee and Jeff Hartman. So everyone brought to the meeting a priority for their area. And we talked about those priorities, and basically what it came down to is the people that do not have access. Everyone had access. They had access to get their boat in and out. And so there is several channels in Chitwood, several, that do not have access. And so that's what it came down to. The meetings are open. You're welcome. We had a large crowd at the meeting. We did it the same format as Pam has done here, which made the meeting move more rapid than in the past. The committee members spoke and hashed out those areas and talked about other concerns on the lake. And then we set the priorities based on what the manager's proposal was, and we moved to public comment. Mr. Van Overmyron was there and spoke a little bit about the Strategic Planning Committee and the work that they are doing. We are working together, so that you know we are working together on that. Once that report is made available to you, you will see where submergent aquatic plant life and dredging and drawdown, which are the big concerns out of the 10 concerns of the lake. Those are the 3 big concerns that these freeholders have, and we hear about it every year. But once that report is made available and she gets the survey back, you will see that then we will have outlined how we're going to move forward. And I hope that answers your question.
Just to follow up, how does the representative on your committee come to know whether or not there are issues in their area? I mean, how does that happen? Because I know Tim never talked to us. So how is that information on each district secured that comes to the committee?
Well, no, in my case, basically you have dialogue and they approached me, with some of their concerns. So I made sure I brought that to the committee's attention, like with Icebox Cove, that we're having some issues.
So the squeaky wheel approach.
Well,
is that fair?
As a representative, certainly I took the views of my constituents, as
But you don't go out like survey and talk to all the freeholders and find out if there are particular areas, or look at the bathymetrics, or?
I'm probably not the best to answer that question because my areas are minimal in terms of dredging, so I'll defer to some of the others.
Well, Susan, we harken back, all this harkens back to the original sediment removal plan map. You've seen it, I'm sure, where zones are delineated, and this is Jamie, how many years ago was this done? I guess we're probably looking at 10?
Yeah.
10. Right. So there was a master plan for this access dredging started back a decade ago. So we still have that map, and we've been working through it. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it's not like this is just these come out of the air. There were priorities. Now things have changed. We have new information. More dirt has come in places that we didn't expect it to. So we're, I guess, constantly working to sort of take the changes and factor them into what was the original plan, because it's a work in progress, but it definitely had an outline to start with.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think it was the first dredging committee, which was before my time, but they basically had your 7 sub areas, and then the 2 committee members per district kind of mapped out in priority which areas were the worst within that district.
Right.
So now we've kind of come to the point where we've worked through a lot of those, and there's a lot of areas that, there's areas that still need dredge, but it's not really as bad as it used to be. So we're kind of running out of priorities. So it probably would be something to reprioritize all those areas. But
Thank you. I think that.
If you haven't seen that map,
Oh, I have.
yeah.
I think it's good to hear the process going on around.
Anyone else? Oh, hang on.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Jay Dare. I'm a new resident on the lake in District 1. My wife and I bought Bruce's home in the aforementioned Icebox Cove late last fall. And as new residents on the lake, just an idea perhaps, and maybe this exists and I just don't know about it, it's entirely possible. But as new residents on the lake, there's lots of things you have to sort of learn about the lake, like boat permit and riprap and Lotus and lots of other facts and figures. And you tend to acquire that information in very random bits and pieces from neighbors and people that you might know who live on the lake, etc. And there's certainly some information on the website, but it seems to me, and maybe it's because I'm a marketing consultant, it might make sense to put together sort of like, hey, you just moved to the lake, here's the things you need to know, frequently asked questions guide. Now, there's not a tremendous amount of turnover among stringholders, but speaking from experience, it would be spectacular to have sort of the Welcome to the Lake guide, and I would certainly volunteer to work on that with the board or with Adam as somebody who's experienced it recently. So thank you.
It's a great idea.
I have a place in Communication District 1. Just a couple, one quick question. Since we have two barges now, are they going to be used simultaneously or like interchangeably, or how does that work?
Yes, it's going to be a little trial and error right at the beginning of the season. But my initial thoughts to increase efficiencies, use both of them for dredging. The smaller barge will hold about a fifth, maybe a little bit less of what the large barge does. So in order to minimize transporting sediment and fuel usage, we'll be looking at unloading the small barge into the large barge until that's full, and then just trucking that one barge to the disposal site instead of doing individual trips every time.
But not doing two different sites on the lake at once?
No.
I see.
No.
Okay.
We
The
don't
other thing I was
currently
just
budget
wondering, and I guess it's kind of a suggestion, and wondering if we're looking into it, is any kind of mitigation efforts in terms of the infill into the lake? Because I guess I haven't heard a lot of discussion about that.
That's actually going to be part of what comes into when you get the sedimentation study report. There will be recommendations about how to stop some of that.
Wonderful, because Icebox Cove is another one. Because I know for sure when it rains heavily, it just looks, it's just a wash of mud.
I'd like to address that. And one of the other concerns that came to the committee was there are some things available to freeholders to purchase to stop some of that from coming in. You can buy a turbidity curtain to put in. I can tell you that Salmon Harbor neighbors chipped in mostly $300 a piece. Not everyone chipped in, but enough to pay to have weirs put into their tributary that comes into the lake. Working fantastic. Without those weirs, Salmon Harbor is a natural silt trap. So the neighbors put those in themselves. Walker Channel built a weir and put it in themselves because these are tributaries. Now, because you may have running water that comes into your area, you would need to put in a curtain, so to speak. And those are $1,500, James, so to speak. That's not bad. And you know,
I didn't know anything about that. So
it's one of the things that came up in the committee, and I'm glad you said that is coming into the lake. And you know, if we had some proactive people that would look into that, call the office and find out where to get those such things, you know, that would help. That would help the whole lake.
And then in the study group too, we're creating fact sheets essentially, and kind of goes back a little bit to the welcome to the lake. We're trying to consolidate all the information into an easy guide where you can go there, find it, look at what you need, and learn. And within that, we'll actually having you know, what can I as a freeholder do, and a lot of that's going to fall into our education. So as we move forward, we're really going to be stepping up the education effort because the knowledge is out there, and there are little steps that freeholders can take as individuals to contribute to the overall goal.
Did you say you're enhancing the website? Is that what that?
We're creating fact sheets, which eventually will be on the website, but we're trying to consolidate all the information as far as, you know, dredging operations, vegetation operations, park is trying to get it all into a single spot instead of piecemealing it together between the website and local talk. So
that was my third comment or suggestion, was to enhance the website and make it more interactive and more informative, and kind of just spoke, you know, just if you're new on the lake, you know, this is what you had to keep in mind and things like that. So I actually think the website could be really used a lot. I know it takes work and all, so I'm not suggesting you go do it or something, but, you know, it's.
I would
it
say
be a valuable tool.
the Education and Communication sub-team on the Strategic Planning Committee has their sites on the website and making it a better website as we go forward. I see Susan nodding, so point well taken.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I'm Spencer Ryder, and I'm in District 2. Did I understand correctly, we spent $4,000 last year for environmentally friendly oil, and now we're doing it again?
Yes.
Why is that?
For the rental excavators. It wasn't for our own equipment. We decided it was in the best interest of the Conservancy District to have biodegradable oil, which we run in our own machines. But if we do the rental machines, they do not come with that.
So last year we did our own machine?
No, last year the rental machine is what we put it in. So they charge us essentially the labor and the cost of oil to drain out their machines and fill it back up with biodegradable.
And what did we get for that? I mean, what did we use that for, that we rented?
That was not a whole lot. To test out the new equipment.
All right. Just as a side note, Gail had a suggestion that you get your oil from the porthole. Okay. Whether that's biodegradable or not. Just a comment. You put icebox as your second priority, but then later in the discussion, you talked about last year. It was deemed not to use the West End disposal site because a lot of prep work would have to be done before you used it. So I'm kind of wondering why you've got, you've targeted it as the second priority. If you're going to spend like 80% in chipwood, it seems to me like you spend 80% and then you spend a lot of money on the disposal site at the east end or west end, you're going to be out of money before you even start digging an icebox. I don't know how much money that is, but it just, when you mentioned those two things, it kind of struck me as odd that you wouldn't kind of prioritize around what disposal site you have in operation rather than go back and forth.
What's the other, how many cubic yards does the big, large barge hold?
100.
Okay. So that's, yeah, good reference point. Good point.
The third question I got is, what's the status of Little Africa? I mean, that's closer to Chitwood than any disposal site.
Good question.
It's on the table. It's on the table with the dredging study group, and it's going to be brought to the board here in the next month or two to look at trying to get that accomplished, since we're going to be right there. So you think it might be accomplished this year? I don't know. Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thanks.
Todd?
My name's Todd Fisher, District 6. Basically, this is the same stuff I've said for over a year, but since it got switched around where we don't talk when the people's here, I really want to comment for, the weed guy. You asked him a few things, and he stated that no, it's not effective if it's raining, or if it rains on it when they're spraying it on the lotus that's tall, which that's proven. It don't. He stated they don't spray it in the rain. I've stated in here several times that yes, they do. I have them on video. It's that they're under Malcolm's carport when they came back to respray me, and it's just a downpour of rain. And they were sitting out there spraying my so-called path in this rain. It didn't work. I went this past year. The only reason I was able to get in and out was because we had plenty of rain throughout the summer. But I'm driving through, in a pontoon, I'm driving through lotus that's 2 foot over the top of the pontoon. I showed, different people on the board that video. It just needs to be, more of a management part when they're out there spraying, to know where they're spraying and to know that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, especially when we're paying for it. That's just a comment I have. As far as like the dredging and the priorities, I've said it over and over again. Yes, the main goal is for everybody to have access. And I agree with that. That's why I'm still waiting on my access. I understand, things change. You go to, particularly like, Eidolon, you've been there 3 times. Icebox Cove, you're heading back the 2nd time possibly. Never been to my place. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is the 2nd time.
Hello.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Sandy Perlman. I'm a new resident.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Do you keep track of the new residents?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Have you made yourself?
Well,
known
James
to-
came by, I think at the urging of Susan, and I think I'm in District 2 because I live a couple doors down from Susan. I don't know what the districts are yet.
We'll get you a map.
That would be great. But it would be nice to have, it is overwhelming. We're just talking on the way over here. I don't know, I've never lived at a lake. I've been a plumber for almost 44 years. I can tell you that all you need to know about water. And yes, it does run downhill, but I don't know much about other than that. And there's a party after the meeting at our place. So. What?
It's Sandy.
Sandy.
I remember many years ago being in your shoes, and I just annoyed the heck out of people. I called the office, I called the marina, I just started.
Well, I mean, I'm very fortunate
Yeah.
that my lifeline lives 2 doors away from me. I don't have much to worry about. But yet, now you're coming up to the first time I've ever had to put the dock in the water, which I've never done before. I don't even remember which one is mine now. We came out and you talked, and now I've forgotten which one is mine. And is this something that I have to do myself? And how do you attach it? And I'm pretty handy. Like I said, I've been a plumber for almost 44 years, but you're asking me to do things that I don't understand. I think the board, and how many people are new to the lake? How many people does that happen every year? Do you guys know about how many?
We've had huge turnover this year.
We've got
a lot that
of
we don't hear from the realtors themselves. So unless people reach out to the office and get the information.
I'm reaching out.
Yeah, all right.
I think the gentleman in the back had a great idea. If we could use his marketing expertise and get something out to the people, I really commend
Or we
you
can
for-
have a meeting, have a newcomers. Susan had a great, example of a newcomers club or something like that. Because I don't even know, here it is, February. I probably wouldn't normally have to worry about it in February, but I'm about to put shorts on. So, that kind of thing. So if the board, takes into consideration something that us newbies, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is where the fun begins, Sandy. Don't worry. It's all
Okay,
good.
I'm actually pretty scared.
You might want to keep a journal because it would make great reading.
And start saving your money.
And I just learned there's a new freeholder as of today on Spillway Road. So property class.
So that last Saturday in April, when it is a volunteer day, perhaps we could all meet at the shelter afterwards, or a potluck or something like that.
It's a great idea.
Usually we have lunch.
Or lunch.
I usually bring a little something, so we can make it an event. Anyone else? Hi, Gail.
It's weird to say something. I've been at the lake for 33 years. I own several houses and a lot of land. And you don't see very many of the holders. What I'm saying is we should really stay involved. After all these years, there's people that live at the lake that I've never met, that have never come to a single meeting. And even one of the original board members lives near me, and I keep saying, you formed this, you formed it to begin with, please come. I just want to put a bug in your ear, mention this once in a while. I grew up at a lake. I've always been a lake person. And the lake I grew up at had 1,000 families. It was only 7 miles of shoreline. It was a lot smaller than this lake, but it incorporated a lot more people. And I want the board to keep an open mind about expanding some of the people that could be at the lake. So we have more than 488. I think we should have another 100 people if we could get them. Now, a couple people I've talked to about, you should approach the lake, maybe they could include you. They're like, oh, I don't want to pay the extra taxes, but there might be somebody, and I think that's a way to get more revenue, that we're not crowded the lake, we could use more freeholders, is what I'm saying. The other thing is, I still mention this for years, and I haven't done much about it, but to have a newsletter that goes out over email that includes people who work at the lake, different people that live at the lake, businesses. It should be a simple thing nowadays. I've talked about it and I'm still willing to work on it.
These are all, that's a great suggestion as well, and that's something we'll be talking about in the strategic planning committee.
Yeah.
And
I'm all, I just want to say I'm all for having more activities, maybe at Riddle Point, that would bring more people in, that would bring more money in too.
We've been talking about that as well. Thank you, Gail. Hi, David.
Again. So my name is David Kehoe and I'm in District 3. I don't know how many people know about this or don't know about it, but there is a community website, more or less. It's called Nextdoor Lake Lemon.
Yes.
I meant to say that.
And so I just want to bring that to everyone's attention because I found a number of the residents who've lived around the lake for many, many years were unaware of this. And so if you're interested, do you know about this? You guys?
Okay, can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
You cannot be a member, I'm a member of Nextdoor and Butler Tarkington, which is where we live. I can't be a member of both. Did you know that? You cannot be, you can't, Nextdoor won't allow you.
You can make your email address.
Well, you have to have, well, I don't have a separate email. I mean, you can if you change your email address, but you're only allowed to be a member of one area. I tried that already.
Okay, well, I'm just bringing it to everyone's attention because it's actually a really good form of communication. You hear a lot about, we heard about the attempted arson that occurred on South Shore Drive through Nextdoor Lake Lemon. Wouldn't have known about that otherwise. Lots of tips and, you know, who's a good person to cut down your trees or put in your dog, things like that. So, we might just disseminate that information. I don't know, James, you guys, Adam, you guys familiar with this?
I've heard about it, yes. I've not gotten on there, but I have heard about it.
There's also a Lake Lemon Facebook page. Yeah.
there are several Lake Lemon Facebook pages.
Anyway, just thought I'd bring that to everybody's attention so that, you know, that's a good idea. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Anybody else? That brings us, I think, to, we did not, it says board election results on our agenda, but there really was no election this year because we have 3 areas. Can I, folks, we're just in the back row there, we're just about done. Thank you. Board election results, although there was no election, we have 3 terms expiring, and in each term, the person ran unopposed. So, according to our bylaws, those people become new board members without any need for an election. So, just to start, we're going to say farewell tonight to John, although we will formally say farewell in the summer, and we'll talk about that. John's finishing his 8th year on the board. And we're going to miss him very much and have appreciated all he has done. And miraculously, his lovely wife, Laura, and this is District 4, is going to be, has volunteered to serve in the next 4-year term. Laura, you're out there? Okay, I'm going to have you come forward in a minute. I got out of order. Sub-area 1, which is Lance's district. And Lance, you've been a faithful treasurer. You've helped us navigate that budget. I've never learned so much about budgets in my life, and I've appreciated that and appreciated your conservative style because we're called to be careful with our money, being a public institution, and we'll miss you too, but I hope you have a little more time at home in the evenings. And to your credit, I believe Michael Klitzing is volunteering to step into your big shoes, and Michael, we're delighted to have you. That brings us to sub-area 5. Andy Hoffman couldn't be with us tonight. He is finishing a 1-year term. And Les Wadzinski has graciously volunteered to step into that role. And we welcome all of you. So with that, if you wouldn't mind if we do the oath all together. If you want it individually, we can do that too. But I'm thinking, would you all 3 like to either just stand or you can come forward? I'd
have them come up.
Be glad. Oh, okay, they said come up. So if you come up, that'd be great.
I used to see what they look like. Who their representatives are.
This is pretty
Les,
easy.
you want to? Oh, maybe I don't know.
Oh, Laura, do you need?
I got one for Laura.
Oh, I'm going to put on glasses now.
Well, you could just listen
A
to it.
vial of blood.
Right. This is the official director's oath of office. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I shall, to the best of my ability, strive to accomplish the purposes for which the district is established, and to properly operate and maintain its works of improvement. See, that wasn't right. Thank you very much.
Sign?
Yes, if you sign.
Yeah, I need a-
All right.
And then the rest of us are leaving. You'll never see us again.
The next meeting, folks, is right back here, Thursday, March 23rd at 6 o'clock. And if I can
Sign your life away.
I know, gosh, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Thanks, man.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi, nice to meet you. Michael
Nice to meet you.